Thank you very much. I was told I have to keep it at 7 minutes, and there is no extra time.
Right. You get half a minute extra.
Half a minute extra. Okay. By the way, it's 1-0 to America for those who are watching. I was paying attention to everything in Dutch, I promise. I was also just watching the scores. Okay. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Here we go. The campaign against peace. I'm going to give a number of examples of how the European Union, using European aid funding from your government and other governments as well, are actively funding the campaign against peace and against the two-state solution. So, at NGO Monitor, we look at the funding that goes from governments to the NGOs. In simple terms, we follow the money. So what do we look at? For example, we look at about 150 to 200 million euro a year that goes from governments like the Netherlands and others and the European Union to organizations in Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and internationally that are working in Israel. Everyone before me, and I thank you to Andrew and all the other speakers before me, spoke in detail about European policy. So I'm just going to use two very quick examples. The European Union, since its establishment until today, has been very adamant that its primary goal for peace in the region is the establishment of a negotiated two-state solution. Okay, that's fine. I'm not here to discuss whether it's right or wrong and what that means, but that is European policy. So let's look at some of the examples of the non-governmental organizations that are funded by the European Union. An organization based in Gaza called Al-Mizan. Al-Mizan recently put out a report that accused Israel of flooding Gaza. According to Al-Mizan, how does Israel do this? Israel has dams along the Gaza border, and now during the rainy season, Israel opens the gates and water floods Gaza. There's just one problem. Israel doesn't have dams like that anywhere near Gaza. The only dams that Israel can actually open are in the Galilee, and they haven't been opened in the last 15 years. But Al-Mizan is receiving European Union funding specifically, just to give you an example. This report, that came out recently, has been debunked. Al Jazeera, which is not necessarily the most pro-Israel newspaper around, even they had to apologize and say that when they reported about Israel flooding, it was wrong. Okay? But the report itself, here's quotes from it, says Israel claims they don't have these dams, but we, according to our research at Al-Mizan, say they do. And what is worse, this report is funded by the European Union. The European Union emblem is on this report. Yes, they say, don't worry, we sponsored the report, but the contents isn't our responsibility. Great, that's their liability. Okay, another organization, Al-Haq. Al-Haq is actually well represented here in the Netherlands. In May of this year, they made it very clear that their goal is the end of the Zionist project. The Zionist movement is a racist movement. Zionism and Israel are equal to apartheid. Just a few months ago, they started a campaign to tell the Palestinian Authority to rescind their recognition of Israel. And as Andrew and his colleagues can tell you very well, Al-Haq, here's their leader, Shaun here in The Hague very recently, submitting a request to the ICC prosecutor to have Israelis tried for war crimes here in The Hague. Now let's be very clear. The European Union is funding this organization. If you are funding an organization whose primary goal is to say that Israel is a racist state and Israelis should be tried for war crimes at the International Criminal Court, you are not supporting any type of negotiated solution. You are not supporting a two-state solution. But it's not just Palestinian organizations. As an Israeli, I am proud of the fact that we have a multicultural NGO landscape. We have organizations that are very much for Israel and against Israel. organizations that want to build in Judea and Samaria, organizations that call for the end of the occupation. That is great. That is what we need in Israel. That is part of democracy. But what are the organizations that are funded by the European Union? Again, the European Union that is requesting a two-state solution. An Israeli organization called B'Tselem, also funded by the government of the Netherlands. Netherlands has now declared that Israel is an apartheid state. All right? I don't need to tell anybody from the Netherlands what apartheid means. All right? What is the significance of calling Israel an apartheid state? When you compare Israel to the evil system of apartheid South Africa, apartheid isn't something you negotiate with. Apartheid isn't something you discuss. Apartheid is an evil system and it needs to be destroyed and dismantled to its core. That is what B'Tselem is saying. That is what they're getting money from the European Union to say. Israel is an apartheid state. It needs to be demolished to its core. There is no two-state solution. There is no negotiation. This is the money this is the project that they're getting. This is the money that they're getting from the European Union. This is what they're doing. And finally, 7 minutes, I'm actually going to do it in 5, here we go. How does all this come about? How can it be that the European Union and the Netherlands and other European governments are funding this? How does this work? So I'm going to show you an incredible slide. It's got a lot of arrows, so please pay attention. Here we go. The European Union funds a human rights project, right? And the human rights organizations that are being funded are the ones we just spoke about and others. Al-Haq, Al-Mazan, B'Tselem, organizations like Breaking the Silence and others. Okay? But wait, there is more. The European Union also funds these organizations via the United Nations. So they're getting funding from governments like the Netherlands, Sweden, and others, and Norway that are also outside of the European Union. But they're getting funding directly from the European Union and via the United Nations. But there's more. Church aid groups here in the Netherlands and around the world are also getting European money. And they also give money to these same NGOs. So you're getting, the same NGO is getting money from the European Union directly, from the European Union via the United Nations, from the European Union via various Christian aid groups. And this money is doubled and tripled and quadrupled and more because the money also comes directly from European governments like the Netherlands. But then the question is, how does this policy keep going? Well, here's the answer. Because these NGOs are regarded by the governments, including the European Union, as the experts in their field. So they then take their knowledge, which they're paid for, and send it back to the European Union and say, you have to give us more money because the human rights situation is terrible. Israel is an apartheid state. Give us more money so we can report it. And it is a closed circle that has been going on for 20 years. So now we can understand why, on one hand, the European Union is saying we support a negotiated two-state solution, but in reality, they're actively funding organizations that are working against the establishment of a two-state solution. And that is my 5 minutes. Thank you very much.